we're still having two issues that are not resolved, in which the government is determined to get into resolve. The first is to bring back our hostages, and the second is to make sure that Hamas will leave the Gaza Strip, will not stay as a ruling power there, because if they stay, they will rearm and regroup and attack Israel again, as they stated.
What is a practical solution that Israel can put forward to bring about an end to the war?
There are countries that have managed to de-radicalize their education system. Take, for example, the UAE. After 9/11, they took a decision, and then one generation after, you don't have radical elements in the UAE. I think that Saudi Arabia is trying to do the same. It has a different environment, but it's a good beginning. Morocco is doing the same. There are many Arab countries that are determined to fight radicalism. I think these are our partners.
Why is it you think that Hamas does not want to release the remaining hostages? Is it because they don't want the war to end?
They believe that they have to be in a constant war until Israel is eradicated. And they don't care about the price. They have said publicly.
But it's the Palestinian people who end up suffering.
They have said publicly that they are willing to spill the blood of millions of Palestinians in order to advance their cause. So they are in a situation in which their radicalism leads to a situation in which they cannot admit defeat. They have been defeated, but they are unwilling to admit it, not to have repeated.
What have ties between USA and Israel been like after President Trump assumed office?
We are in sync when it comes to the determination to eliminate Hamas and take it out from the government.
The world's attention is fixed on the Israel-Palestine conflict. It has been a long and arduous conflict. The war between the two states began on the 7th of October. However, the real conflict dates back decades. On the 7th of October 2023, Hamas attacked, abducted, and killed many innocent civilians. So what developments can we expect, and how can a sustainable and practical solution be reached? So joining me today in this conversation is the Ambassador of Israel to India and the non-resident Ambassador of Israel to Sri Lanka and Bhutan, His Excellency Ruwan Azza. Welcome.
Thank you, Alanki. Thank you for this opportunity to have an interview with your YouTube channel.
Thank you very much for being here. And as we firstly begin this conversation, I'd like to focus on the conflict. The war with Hamas has been going on since October 7, 2023. What developments can we expect in the near future?
Well, first of all, the conflict is wider than the conflict with Hamas, because it is a regional conflict.
Yes.
What happened in the last year and a half is that Israel basically managed to hit severely a coalition of radical forces that were built by Iran throughout the last few decades. And we were attacked from 7 fronts, not just from the Gaza Strip. It started with the Gaza Strip, but we were fired at from Hezbollah at Lebanon. We were fired at from Syria, from Iraq, from Yemen, and from Iran. And also we were attacked in Judea and Samaria in the West Bank, in addition to the attacks from Gaza. So fortunately, Israel has managed to do most of the job. We have neutralized the threats in the north. Now we have peace in the north. We have an attempt by a reformed government in Lebanon to stabilize the situation and hopefully to prevent Hamas from rebuilding this huge infrastructure they had built in order to attack us. We have a change in Syria. The regime there is pretty problematic, but Israel has taken defense positions in the border with Syria. The Iranians now are much more hesitant to attack us because we have hit them with a severe blow, despite the fact that they attacked us with hundreds of ballistic missiles, one of the biggest attacks in the history of the world of ballistic missiles against another country. So all in all, at the regional level, the level of fire has gone down. And even in the Gaza Strip, we have destroyed most of the military capability of Hamas. But we're still having two issues that are not resolved, in which the government is determined to get into resolve. The first is to bring back our hostages, and the second is to make sure that Hamas will leave the Gaza Strip, will not stay as a ruling power there, because if they stay, they will rearm and regroup and attack Israel again, as they stated. And therefore, we have to strike a balance that we've been striking in the last 18 months, between military pressure and negotiations to bring back the hostages. So far, we've been able to bring back 196 hostages. We still have 57 hostages to bring back, out of them at least 20 alive. This is very important for us. So we are ramping up now the military pressure in order to get Hamas to bring back the hostages. If they refuse, we will go all the way, take over the Gaza Strip militarily, and then hopefully, following your questions regarding what is going to happen in the future, transfer authority to a more decent and responsible Palestinian leadership with the help of the United States and other responsible partners in the international community.
So I think an important perspective that people should have or can have is the fact that Hamas needs to cooperate as well. Then they're not releasing the remaining hostages. And recently on X, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated, "We can end the war tomorrow if the remaining hostages are released." So my question is, how do the Palestinian people view Hamas?
That's a very interesting question, because following the 7th of October, unfortunately, there was an overwhelming majority of Palestinians supporting these terrible atrocities that Hamas committed. I think that after 18 months and after people saw the terrible consequences of this attack and the devastation that was created mainly in the Gaza Strip, people understand that Hamas is not serving their interests. And therefore, despite the huge fear that people have from Hamas because they are killing and torturing their opponents, the Palestinian opponents, there are a lot of demonstrations against Hamas in the Gaza Strip as we speak. So I think that the opinions are changing within the Palestinian arena. I hope that they change more, because at the end of the day, if people continue to be radicalized, then there is no hope for peace. Mm-hmm. We have to create a situation in which we uproot the radicals from society, in which we encourage education for peace, because Israel has been trying to promote peace with the Palestinians for many decades. We negotiated, we proposed many generous offers to establish Palestinian state in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and the Palestinians refused. So we can go back to that path, but we have to be sure that the terrorists won't be having the stronger hand, because then the moderate forces in Palestinian society will be intimidated.
When we speak about hostages, do you think world leaders are speaking enough about the hostages and about how they should be released by Hamas?
No, I think unfortunately not. I think that a lot of the leaders of the world, especially in Western Europe, are acting out of pressures that they have within their political systems. You know, in our country, we have a Muslim minority of 15%. And this minority, we invest a lot. First of all, they are equal before the law, and the government invests billions of dollars in incorporating Muslims into the working force, into society. In Israel, for example, 45% of Muslim women work. In Britain or France, most of them do not work, and 70% to even more, 75% of Muslim population in Britain, in France, they just are not part of the economy. Mm-hmm. So those governments that are failing in including minorities in their society are preaching us on what we should do or not do in order to defend itself. That's a disgrace. And it emanates only from the pressures that they have within their own political system. Israel is acting with morality. Israel is determined to defend itself according to our laws that are accountable, with a justice system that supports the actions of the military and supervises them. So instead of criticizing us, it's important that all leaders in the world, not just in Western Europe, concentrate in actually taking out of the dictionary, out of the equation, these terrorist tactics of abducting people, raping people, killing indiscriminately, hiding behind schools, inside hospitals. These are tactics that, if they prevail, and if Israel fails to defeat Hamas, will repeat themselves everywhere in the world. We saw only a couple of months ago what happened in Palgan. Right, this is exactly the pattern that terrorists are using more and more in order to intimidate us. You know, this country even, you've been able to overcome terrorism with a lot of effort, both militarily and politically and socially. So imagine that people will be inspired by what Hamas did and go again back in using these tactics. That would be devastating for society. Therefore, this is an international effort we have to do. And it's very important that we coalesce, and not only we talk against terrorism, but we do more by blocking radical content on social media, in electronic media, by passing international resolutions, by isolating those who sponsor terrorism. That's very important. And I think, unfortunately, world leaders are not doing enough.
And I actually do want to talk about India and Pakistan, but before that, we do have the Palestinian Authority, which is the governing body in Gaza and in Palestine overall. So do they really have a say with what goes on in Gaza, or is it Hamas that runs the show?
Well, I'll just, for the audience that doesn't know the history, I'll just say very briefly.
Yes.
After Israel evacuated the Gaza Strip completely in 2005, including uprooting of Israeli settlements there, even graveyards were uprooted, we gave a chance to the Palestinian Authority to really have a showcase on how they can build a Palestinian state, starting with the Gaza Strip. Unfortunately, only a few months after, this terrorist group, Hamas, took over violently, not only attacking Israelis, but attacking their own people, the Palestinian Authority, and they basically took them out of Gaza. And since then, you had, for 18 years, a terrorist rule of the Gaza Strip, in which all the young population was indoctrinated to hate Israel, to kill Jews. People from, kids from kindergarten were given rifles. The education system was only concentrating on how to eradicate Israel. And therefore, there was no rule whatsoever by the Palestinian Authority that takes its authority from the Oslo agreements, the Fatah movement, the PLO. They weren't responsible in the Gaza Strip because they were kicked out by Hamas. In the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria, the Palestinian Authority is also having a lot of challenges because there are militias inside different neighborhoods in the cities, in the main cities of the West Bank, that are actually not receiving the authority of the Palestinian Authority. So we have a serious challenge here with a civil war happening within Palestinian society, which is part of the civil war that is happening in the larger Arab world between Islamists, radicals, and pragmatic forces, national forces. So it's not necessarily connected to the conflict that they have with us. It's part of a larger problem that you have in the Middle East with chaos, endemic problems of lack of resources, poverty, corruption, tribalism, radicalism. And these are also characterized in the Palestinian society.
Also, how is it possible to eliminate Hamas from Gaza, given the fact that Hamas possibly resides among civilians and also in underground tunnels?
It is indeed a very, very difficult challenge. Because first of all, you have to try to separate Hamas from the civilians, and they are doing whatever they can in order to impede that, by hiding, as I said, under hospitals, by removing the uniforms and blending into the safe zones that we have created for the population. So Hamas is putting the civilian population under danger all the time. They're exposing them by hiding behind them. They are sequestrating their aid and selling it to the population, the aid that was given for free by the international community.
But so, news reports that Israel blocks aids.
Well, after there was a ceasefire and 22,000 lorries of goods entered the Gaza Strip, and we saw that Hamas took over them, we decided to stop that until we find a new mechanism. Because if the world doesn't want to empower Hamas, and we have to find a mechanism to impede Hamas from taking over that assistance. So we have created now a new mechanism together with our American friends. We're going to create safe zones, which the Israeli defense forces are going to give an overall defense. And inside these compounds, American companies are going to give assistance to the Palestinian people. This takes time. It's going to be launched in the coming weeks. In the meantime, as we are monitoring the situation, there is a lot of disinformation. People are saying that we've been starving the Palestinians for the last 18 months. That's not true. There is no starvation in the Gaza Strip because we monitor the situation, and when we see that the essentials are going to extinguish, we allow the entrance of more assistance like we did yesterday. So there is a lot of disinformation campaign, and Hamas, unfortunately, has a lot of allies in the Arab world and in the Muslim world, and even in international organizations, which their people are being appointed to create biased reports. They are saying something, but we know what is the situation on the ground. We are going to stand up to our responsibility to continue defending the Palestinian population. And we actually have developed tactics that no country in the world has developed in order to get the population out of harm's way. And the numbers speak for themselves. So despite the fact that there have been devastating results to this war and thousands of civilians have been killed, in comparative terms, when you compare it to other urban warfare areas, the ratio between civilians and terrorists that have been killed is pretty low. Okay, and that's thanks to our efforts. So we are going to continue with that. It's not easy. We have to develop tactics to deal with that. But at the end of the day, I think that we are determined and we can achieve a result in which the Gaza Strip will be stripped from Hamas terror.
So that leads me to my next question. You did say that Israel was attacked from many fronts. So given that situation and then Hamas in Gaza, what is a practical solution that Israel can put forward to bring about an end to the war?
Well, we have to enhance the coalition of the pragmatic forces in the region, which, by the way, we started doing in the past. We already have peace agreements with 6 Arab countries. We had a peace agreement with Egypt more than 50 years ago, with Jordan in 1994, and we signed the historic Abraham Accords more than 4 years ago, having peace with the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. This coalition of pragmatic countries is determined to fight radicalism. And with the support of the United States and other partners in the world, we can create a situation in which radicals are being debilitated. This is what we need, because if we fail diplomatically to supply solutions for the population, if we do not engage in programs to de-radicalize the education system, then, as you say, it's going to be very difficult to solve it. When we fail doing that, at the end of the day, we find the radicals at our doorstep. And by the way, they are not only terrorizing Israel. We've seen devastating results of what they are doing in other parts of the Arab world, in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Libya, and in many other places. This is a problem that is a regional problem. It cannot be contextualized. It has to be dealt internationally and regionally. And I'm very optimistic that we can achieve that, because we have, there are countries that have managed to de-radicalize their education system. Take, for example, the UAE. After 9/11, they took a decision, and then one generation after, you don't have radical elements in the UAE. I think that Saudi Arabia is trying to do the same. It has a different environment, but it's a good beginning. Morocco is doing the same. There are many, Bahrain, there are many Arab countries that are determined to fight radicalism. And I think these are our partners for building peace in the future.
And one more final question about the hostages. Why is it you think that Hamas does not want to release the remaining hostages? Is it because they don't want the war to end?
They believe that they have to be in a constant war until Israel is eradicated. And they don't care about the price. They have said publicly.
But it's the Palestinian people who end up suffering.
That's right. They have said publicly that they are willing to spill the blood of millions of Palestinians in order to advance their cause. So they are in a situation in which their radicalism leads to a situation in which they cannot admit defeat. They have been defeated, but they are unwilling to admit it. And it will require more effort from Israel. Of course, that if we would have more forces in the world supporting us, then Hamas would understand that they are diplomatically isolated and they don't have any choice, because there is rising criticism also within the Palestinian society. So we are determined. This has to continue. As free societies, we always have this challenge to struggle against those who do not respect rules, that are extremists, that are willing to use extremist methods in order to subjugate us. The question is whether we are going to surrender to terrorism or we are going to eradicate it. And this is what we have decided following the 7th of October. We are not going to live anymore with a situation in which a terrorist organization rules territory neighboring Israel. We will not sustain it. We will fight it until it's removed, because otherwise we will have another 7th of October and another 7th of October, which the Israeli public is determined not to have repeated.
And growing terrorism and radicalization and extremism, like you said, is an issue for all humanity.
Yes.
How can terrorism be eradicated?
That's a great question. Look, it's very difficult, because in every situation, also throughout history, you will have the forces of order and the forces that are trying to bring order down. The question is how we can coalesce together. So I started to speak about it before. First of all, you have to have military determination and the ways and the military means to deal with those who are armed. Second, you have to do an international, regional, and local program of de-radicalization by, first of all, things like blocking content, as I said, in social media, and not allowing those extremists to use the platforms that the modern world has given us, like the social media, like electronic media, digital media, in order to propagate their ideologies. Okay, we can do more to cooperate at the international institution level. You know, the UN doesn't even have a definition for terrorism. We have to change that. You have UN organizations that are infiltrated by these extremist groups, like UNRWA, for example, which is an organization that was built in 1948 to feed the refugees, but actually to perpetuate the refugee problem. Imagine that 80 years after, there is a UN body that still feeds people that were dislocated in a conflict that happened a few generations back. This is unprecedented in the history of the world. It cannot continue. The UN has to be responsible for relocating people, helping them to rebuild their lives and not to perpetuate their status as refugees. So this is also, creating a situation in which terrorism is not fought against. On the contrary, it's supported by a UN body. This is unspeakable. We cannot accept that. We have found out that more than 1,300 Hamas members receive salaries from a UN body. This is unspeakable. Cannot continue. So we are determined to fight that, but we need more cooperation. The world can do more if really we want to solve this problem.
I certainly believe that terrorism should be eradicated and should not be tolerated, as it obviously impacts so many people on many levels. So shifting my focus to India, what are your views on the terrorist attack on India recently?
Well, I was very vocal in condemning not only the terrorist attack, but the nature of the terrorist attack. There is no doubt in my eyes that these terrorists received inspiration from what happened on the 7th of October. And they have been, killing innocent people on the base of religion, which again, this is something that is completely inhumane and we cannot accept. So without getting into the Indian-Pakistani conflict, which is not our conflict, there are certain things that we have the responsibility as diplomats and as leaders to condemn. We cannot contextualize and say, oh, because these people are underprivileged, so they have a justification to use these tactics. No, there is no justification for terror. And that is right for our region, it is right for this region, it's right for any region.
Absolutely. And shifting my focus to USA, USA is Israel's closest ally. What have ties between USA and Israel been like after President Trump assumed office?
Well, we are more in sync. Although we received huge assistance from the Biden administration, to which we are very grateful, there were more differences during the Biden administration. And now we sense that we get more support. First of all, in releasing those elements for our military campaign that we need from the United States. But in addition to that, we are in sync when it comes to the determination to eliminate Hamas and take it out from the Gulf.
All right. And just a few days ago, you presented your credentials for your nomination as a non-resident ambassador of Israel to Sri Lanka to President Kumara Dissanayake. So what can you expect of Sri Lanka-Israel relations going forward?
Well, first of all, it was my first time in Sri Lanka, and I felt a lot of warmth and friendship coming from the level of the president through the foreign minister, and in other meetings that I did with the Minister of Agriculture, the Secretary of Defense, the Minister for Public Security and Tourism. There is eagerness to untap the bilateral relations. There is a lot of potential in fields like agriculture, like tourism, guest workers, which we've been increasing a lot in the last few years. We now host about 20,000 Sri Lankan workers. We are very pleased with them. They are pleased, I think, to work in Israel as well. There are many things that we can do. We have cooperation in high-tech. There are Israeli high-tech companies outsourcing some of their services here in Sri Lanka. So we need to concentrate in creating more people-to-people contact. I found out during some of the meetings that our honorary consul Dinesh Rodrigo has organized for me, that there are many companies here, including aviation companies, Israeli aviation companies, that want to renew the direct flights between Israel and Sri Lanka.
Sure.
I think that would give a huge boost to the tourism, to the interaction, and also to business relations.
And before we move on to the final question, there are many pilgrims who wish to visit Israel, including myself. I'm a
Okay.
Christian. Is it safe to visit Jerusalem? Israel?
Absolutely, yes.
Because
yes.
I think there's a perception that it might not be safe, given that there's a war going on.
Look, first of all, right now, as I said, most of the threats that we had in the region, we have managed to deal with them successfully. The situation in Israel in general is pretty stable. Our economy is booming. We are, in the last 2 quarters, we grew an average between 3 and 4%. So there are still problems inside the Gaza Strip. They are being dealt with. From time to time, the Houthis in Yemen fire a rocket or a ballistic missile. Usually we deal with it pretty successfully. So people in Israel are safe. We welcome pilgrims and tourists, and you will love Jerusalem. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the world.
I've heard so. Finally, what is your message to people watching this as ambassador for Israel?
First of all, I am amazed from the warmth and the beauty of Sri Lanka. We visited nature here. We visited the beaches. You have a beautiful country. I know that you're in a path to prosper. We can partner in that path. Israel is also a practical country. We love peace. We love cooperation. And we are looking forward to cooperate with Sri Lankans of all walks of life. Tourism, in guest workers, industry, and high tech. And I'm looking forward to see you in Jerusalem.
Thank you very much for this conversation, Ambassador. It was truly a pleasure having you. And I do wish and hope and pray that there will be peace for Israel and for the Palestinian people as well. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
That was Ambassador of Israel to India and non-resident Ambassador to Sri Lanka and Bhutan, His Excellency Ruwan Azad. Thank you everyone for watching. You can subscribe, comment, and leave your feedback. I'll be back with a new episode. Until then, stay safe and take care.